All right, welcome back to Florida Football Insiders. You just heard from Coach Jim Levitt breaking it down from Scott Frost, all the action over the weekend. Now we are on to week 3. Miami, we are going to get into the Miami Hurricanes. Miami's got a big showdown with Texas A&M. Not as big a showdown as we thought it was going to be a week ago, with Texas A&M getting slapped down by App State, but nonetheless, it's still a high-profile matchup. And Miami will be traveling to College Station this weekend. Mario and the boys, and no better person to talk all things Miami Hurricanes than with Ian Hest. Ian covers the Hurricanes down in South Florida for us, and Ian's back on the podcast to break it down. Welcome back, Ian.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you, man.
First off, before we get to the Miami Hurricanes, what were your thoughts on Scott Frost? I know you have some history there, covering Scott a little bit, so talk to me about Scott Frost.
Yeah, I covered the Huskers for a while. I mean, it's sad because at the outstart of this, you thought it was a match made in heaven. You know, Scott was the prodigal son who was coming back home, and really, it never got rolling just from the start. I mean, even pre-COVID, when those first couple of years, there was a lot of excuses for 4-8 seasons, and it just seemed like he never got going before it ever started. A lot of excuses were made, not a lot of action was taken. And I think in this modern era of college football, Nebraska is in an awkward situation where they really need to come into a bit of a reckoning with where they are and what they're doing. And from there, hopefully, once they can diagnose fully the problem, they'll be able to find solutions.
I give Trev Alberts credit. He easily could have sat on this for another couple of weeks and saved $7 or $8 million from what it sounds like with the buyout and all that. He didn't. He pulled the trigger. Yeah, he almost had to, the way they lost Saturday night against Georgia Southern. Got Oklahoma coming to town this week. You couldn't let that program linger for another 2 or 3 weeks just to save $7 or $8 million. I'm sure somebody in that program wrote a check for that money to help speed this up. Is probably what happened. You'll never hear that, but I'm sure that's probably what happened. Where do you think they go from here as far as, you've heard all the names, Matt Campbell, all the different guys, those Midwestern guys, Mark Stoops, Kentucky, getting a lot of pub. What's the kind of guy you need? Forget the name. What's the kind of guy that you need to have in Lincoln? Limited recruiting access, things like that, to get players and build that program.
Yeah, Matt Campbell is an interesting one because he's always been that name that they've thrown out and never really pursued very heavily. That's a very easy solution. The only issue I think with that is it's a bit of the meet the new boss, same as the old boss, which is why I could see them going in a different direction. When it comes to the Huskers, what they really, in my opinion, need to do is just finally stop worrying about the regionality of where they are. You can't change your location.
Right.
For too long, they've been a little too preoccupied with this, and instead just consider yourself a national program. Stop with the regionalization of it, and really, recruit coast to coast. Brand yourself coast to coast. As embrace sort of the quirks of being in the Midwest. And oh, why do you want to go into the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, right? I mean, we saw just what Oklahoma was able to do, making Oklahoma cool. There is a blueprint for this. Nebraska is not very different than Oklahoma. We just throw them in two different categories because they've gone in two separate directions since they've both become national programs, or since this new era of college football has happened. So I think really looking at what Oklahoma, even maybe Oklahoma State have done in the past couple of years, would really be a nice blueprint for what Nebraska can do in the near future.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's get to your Miami Hurricanes. You cover them 2 weeks in. Saturday was a little lethargic. They looked like they weren't interested in Southern Miss, kind of looking ahead. One of those kind of games obviously happens a lot, but they won. They didn't get beat where other teams around the country looked ahead and got beat. So give Miami credit. They won the game they needed to win. Through 2 weeks, give me just your general sense of the roster and how things are going for Mario and through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd give it about a C, maybe a C minus.
Okay.
They haven't played well in either game. They really haven't. Both games, it took a little while to get going. Don't forget they fell behind by a field goal to Bethune-Cookman before running away with that one too. So we haven't really seen the Tyler Van Dyke that we were expecting. Henry Parrish has really shown all the best of a workhorse back to back weeks with 100 yards and a score. The Ole Miss transfer. So he's looked great in establishing the run game. But the problems on the defense that we talked about preseason, the linebackers haven't played well. The defensive backs are inconsistent. When they are consistent, they've played phenomenally. Tyreek Stevenson showed that as much last week, but it really is very defensive line reliant. It's very heavy on how they're going to be able to slow down a quarterback. And with Texas A&M, that presents sort of a unique problem that they actually did have a little bit of with Bethune-Cookman with a scrambling type quarterback. But they are a little too reliant right now on that defensive line. And if they're not going to be able to get pressure, it's going to be a shootout. And the offense hasn't performed well enough. I know that sounds crazy with scoring 100 points in 2 games to say that, but the offense really hasn't played well enough to say that you think that they could be in a dogfight like that.
Do you worry about offensively? Do you think it's a schematics thing, or do you think it's do you think they just need to play better as players, wide receivers? And it seems like Parrish is legit at running back. We know what Van Dyke can do. Do they have enough on the outside and at tight end to be competitive against these upper level teams?
Yeah, I don't think that it's personnel. I do think that it is a little bit of understanding a new system, understanding what your strengths are. Tyler Van Dyke loves to throw the ball vertically down the field. You saw he's almost more comfortable with the deep ball than he is these little, dink plays that they go with and relying on that speed to the outside. He likes to play vertically, and Miami sometimes, because they have so much talent, because they have so much speed, they sometimes get a little too cute and they play horizontally instead of playing vertically. You've seen that happen the past couple of weeks. The good part about that is that that's an easily diagnosable problem. What you can do from there is very easily solve that. Quick slants, 3-yard drops, getting the ball 10, 15 yards deep in the air really can change the dynamic of an offense very quickly.
And looking at the landscape of the ACC, this conference is wide open. Clemson not playing great. NC State struggled early, so this is a game. If they can win this game, they got a chance to make a run here, even though and continually get a little better each week kind of program. They could quickly be in the top 10 here if they can win this game, and they got a chance for a special year.
I agree. Yeah, I think that really, UNC maybe has been finding their own, which we didn't expect. UVA struggled more than we've expected, but I wouldn't say that there's any program out there, barring still at Clemson at the end of the year, that scares you. They're going to be favored every game of the way outside of this one and the Clemson game. So everything's still on the table for this team. And, a lot of us were talking after the game, because it was a noon game over the weekend, that when you left there at 3:30, 4 o'clock, you were feeling, oh, Miami didn't play that well, or they really up to the caliber of these upper echelon programs. And then you looked around the rest of the country and you saw what happened with Baylor. You saw what happened with Florida. You saw what happened, with
A&M, Texas A&M.
With A&M, right after that. So I think that after that, that feeling sort of went away that said, oh, well, okay, like they still won by 3 touchdowns. This still was a comfortable win, heading into the fourth quarter. So I think that there was a better feeling as the day went on than what was happening in real time. Because if you would have talked to people in the second quarter, they would have given you a much different answer than when they were talking to you that evening.
How do you think the crowd? Obviously, you're with the way A&M played last week, you're probably gonna get a best A&M effort you're gonna get because of the way they played in that environment. Do you think the roster is constructed where they're gonna be able to have enough experience in that roster, in that room, to handle that crowd on the road in College Station?
Yeah, if there's one thing that Miami Hurricanes are known for, it's loving to play the villain. I don't think that they're going to have any problem going into a hostile environment. That's where Miami gives you Miami's best, right? So I think that they'll revel in it. I think that they'll really bask in the hatred that will come their way and probably welcome it as the more the better. This is one of those games where Miami, it's a tired trope at this point, but is Miami back? We say again and again. This is one of those games. I know that they did lose to App State. They're now ranked in the low 20s, but you really look at those games and you win it. College Game Day was going to go to this, yes. Right? So
now they're going to App State in Troy because of the upset.
Right. So these are one of those games that Miami fans and Miami players look at as that staple game where hey, remember us? We're still big bad and can make your season pretty ugly.
Two things will get you out of here. Do they go to A&M and win?
I think so. I was surprised to see the line as big as it was. And I almost take solace in the fact that they haven't put together a complete 4 quarters yet, because you can't go in and say, okay, now we've got this figured out. You still do have that chip on your shoulder, and having the couple of poor starts that they've had really, I think, can behoove them to go out in a hostile environment like this and make sure that they're on the front foot from the moment the whistle's blown. They've played much better in second halves, which really is a testament to Mario, because for the past decade, second halves have been the ire of Canes fans. So the fact that they'll be able to go out there and hopefully from the very first play, very first snap, be able to be attacking the game, be the aggressor. I think that if they're able to do that, if they don't fall behind double digits, really like 10 early, if they are able to keep it close into the second quarter and the second half, I think that they'll come out with a win.
I got to tell the audience, Ian's wearing a very South Florida-esque shirt. I like the shirt there with the palm trees and some beauty. That is quintessential South Florida right there.
9 o'clock in the morning and it's only 100 degrees outside.
Last thing, the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, a great debut yesterday with Tua. Tyreek Hill played very well against New England. Again, New England's not the juggernaut, but still give them credit. They played really well, and I thought Tua played pretty well in that offense.
Yeah, they gave a really great start. The other thing, too, that people aren't talking about, the defense played really well.
Yes.
So the fact that the defense was able to come up as big as they did, they scored as well. They matched the Patriots the whole game. I think that that'll be an underrated part of this team. Tua just needs to be a game manager. You saw a couple of those balls that Tyreek Hill nabbed out that could have been interceptions. It could have been incompletions on third down. So as long as he's, in control, this team has a lot of weapons around him, and that defense, I think, will carry them to be one of the better teams in the AFC. Watch out for them. I'm not saying that they're at the level of the Bills, but they could give them some problems.
You saw the diversity of that wide receiver core with Waddle, with Tyreek Hill, the way they got on the ball, those speed sweeps, those outs. They're going to be a tough team to handle as far as on the outside with those threats. And I like the aggressiveness of Mike McDaniel. He went for it on 4th and 8 from midfield right before the half, turned into a 50-yard touchdown to Waddle. So I think you got a chance down there to have a good year on both fronts.
Yeah, your Bucks look pretty good too. If you can only put it in the end zone, right?
That's right. I did. So, all right, Ian, great work, man. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
At Ian Hest on Twitter. You can follow all the stuff that's going on there, covering the Canes this weekend, A&M, and all South Florida sports over there.
No, he does a great job. He also he even covers some Inter Miami FC, some MLS, man. I see him all the time tweeting about that. So keep up the great work, man. I'm going to call you next time. I'm going to bring in is Don Johnson from Miami Vice, circa 2022. So keep up the great work, and we'll talk real soon, man.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, we'll be right back on the Florida Football Insiders.